movements during your everyday life or at work. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Swati. I'm an executive power coach. So basically, and I'm also a certified posture expert. So basically, what I do is I help execute executives walk into a room and own it. How do I do it? By teaching them how to get into a power posture or to improve their posture. And basically, they have that confidence, that dynamic personality because they worked on their posture, and then they can get into a room and then completely crush it, right? So that's just a little bit about me. Going back to our topic for today, can you get injured from repetitive movements that are done during your everyday life or during your work hours? Now, there is something called accumulative trauma disorder. So I'm not just throwing words at you, I'll explain you what that is, or a repetitive stress injury. So if you are doing a certain action on a repeat mode every single day or probably every single hour, multiple number of times in the hour, you are prone to get a repetitive stress injury. Now, there are certain other names for it. So, BlackBerry thumb, iPod fingers. Who uses iPods anymore? Anyway, PlayStation thumb, gamer's thumb, stylus fingers. So, for example, if I'm on my phone, okay, so imagine I'm holding my phone and I'm playing Candy Crush all day. What happens? My thumbs bear the brunt of it, right? Or if I'm texting all day long, or if I am, say, sitting at the computer and doing this movement with my mouse all day long, right? So these can lead to repetitive stress injuries, right? So there's a repeated stress on that part of your body, and that leads to an injury. Now, it's also called overuse syndrome. In case you're going to go and Google it, you will come across overuse syndrome as well. Now, what happens in this is there can be injury to your muscles, ligaments, basically joints in that area due to the repeated movements. So, what sort of repetitive movements are we looking at? Now, obviously, repetitive movements that are like uh, symmetrical movements, but also we're looking at vibrations. So, think about somebody who's, say, a construction worker, right? He's holding a drill, and that drill is giving him that repeated vibration movements in his hands, right? So these people are more prone to arthritis and other problems in the hands, but also to repetitive stress injuries, or RSIs as we call them. People who are hairdressers. So when you're a hairdresser, you're holding that scissor in your hand, and you're doing that repeated cutting with the scissor. So they end up with a decurvent stenosynovitis. It's a long name, but basically what it means is there's inflammation in the tendon of your thumb here, right? So that, and then there is tennis elbow. So there are lots and lots of pathologies or problems that you can have that are under one umbrella of repetitive stress injuries, RSIs. So tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, these are all caused by, mostly caused by RSIs. Now, what are the things that we can do? Now, this is about the RSIs, but in the first place, you don't want to get it. If you get it, obviously, you got to manage it, right? So, what is the good way to avoid it? So, RSIs are commonly seen in people who use a lot of computers, and nowadays, with our lifestyles, I think most of us are using laptops or computers, right? So, let me tell you two good and simple tips to manage, or rather avoid, sorry, not manage, but avoid repetitive stress injuries. So, for example, if you say, if you are using a mouse, okay, so you're sitting at a desk all day long and you're using a mouse. So, what will happen is, I'm just looking for mine, if I can find it. It's right here. Yeah, got it. Right. So if I'm using, say, this mouse on my notebook, I'll just show you on my notebook. Obviously, you need a mouse pad for this. So what will happen is, if suppose this is, just assume it's my mouse pad. So what happens is, do you see how my wrist goes in this extended position? So this is neutral for my wrist, okay? This is bent forwards and this is bent backwards. The moment I place my hand here, do you see how my wrist has gone up? Now, if you have a mouse pad with a wrist support, what will happen is you will have your wrist in this position. So, what happens is, do you see how my wrist is in a neutral position? So, if I don't have a mouse pad, sorry, a wrist support on my mouse pad, what do? Roll up a towel, a hand towel, a face towel, roll it up, pop it under your wrist right here where the crease of your wrist is, and then hold that mouse. So instead of being in this position, you will be in this position rather than flexing backwards, sorry, extending backwards, you will be in a neutral position. So in repetitive stress injuries, what you want to do if you want to avoid these is try and maintain your joints in neutral. When the joints are not in neutral, that is when you get into a poor posture. Usually when we think about posture, we think about the spine, your neck, your lower back, but posture also is applicable to different parts, all the parts of your body really. So that was one tip of trying to maintain your joints into neutral, and I gave you an example of how to do that. Secondly, is modify your activity. Okay, so if because we took the example of tennis elbow, let me go back to that. Tennis elbow doesn't always happen to people who play tennis, right? It can happen to anybody, but it is more commonly seen in people who play tennis because of the grip on the tennis racket. So, for example, if I'm holding my tennis racket, say I've got a grip and I'm holding it like this. So, you see how my fingers are wrapped over my tennis racket handle. So, the tennis elbow that happens is because these tendons, you see these tanning out right here, these are the ones that get stressed when your racket grip is very narrow, or even your steering wheel. For those who are, say, taxi drivers, let's leave the tennis players aside. Taxi drivers, when you are holding your steering wheel, or if you drive long distances for work or leisure, if when you're holding your steering wheel, you're holding it like this. If you have a thicker grip on your steering wheel, what will happen is you're probably going to grip more like this, right? So your grip is not so tight as compared to if you don't have a extra padding on your steering wheel, right? So that is another thing. If you have been gripping items and like for sports or for driving, or say if you're a writer, get a pen with a thicker grip, right? So it's not just the fist, it's the fingers as well. So if you are doing any activity that is aggravating your repetitive stress injury, in this second example being your tennis elbow, then you need to modify that activity. You don't stop it. If you're a writer, obviously you got to write, right? I mean, people nowadays use computers, but there are writers who still like to write down. So yeah, I think this RSIs form a very large group of problems that people face nowadays because of our lifestyles. There's so many people I see in my practice every day who have issues like tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, carpal tunnel syndrome. Um, I mean, you name it, and it's every second condition is related to RSIs. If you want to find out more tips and tricks to improve uh, your posture so that you are not so prone to repetitive stress injuries or any of these conditions that I mentioned during the video, feel free to join my Facebook group. It's a free group where we discuss these conditions in greater details, where we discuss hacks and ways to get around them, easy, simple ways that you can implement in your everyday life. We do talk about posture as well. So get in the group, have a look at it, see if it's your thing. And I will leave a link to the group in the description below. For those of you who are watching me on Instagram, the link is in my bio. It says my community. So, alrighty, I hope this was useful. And now you do have an answer to, can you get injured from repetitive activities during your everyday life or at work? Okay, I'll see you in the next video, and you guys take care. Bye for now.